Oh my gosh, we are live. Holy cow, this is going to be awesome. Welcome to everyone that's attending for the number one government contracting series online. Yeah. My name is Jonathon Guyer, and my special guest is Randal Wimmer, my mentor, my government contracting mentor. Uh, yeah, yeah. I've described it before, and I just like saying it. He's the Yoda to my Luke. It's fun. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to dive right into it. Quick introduction, and then I'm going to turn the floor over to Randy because he has some good info to share. My name is Jonathon Guyer. I helped him, my main claim to fame we're sharing here. I helped implement a health information exchange for the state of Minnesota, which was a government contract. In that opportunity, I was able to speak to 30 some odd thousand veterans. And yeah, we were the most successful site in the United States, which was a government contract, which was the door that opened up my eyes to what Randy's about to present here. Randy?
Okay. Hey, well, first of all, Jonathon, thank you so much for hosting this. For those of you who don't know, Jonathon is a LinkedIn top voice, which means he's kind of a big deal on LinkedIn, and he's been very gracious in allowing me to kind of like piggyback on his platform on LinkedIn. And we decided to do this because, well, let me tell you what this is. What we're trying to do is we're trying to advocate for more government contracting.
Yes, sir.
More people to throw their hat in the government contracting industry, and for a lot of reasons. One is that over the last decade or so, the number of government contractors have been steadily declining, and when that happens, we all lose. The government loses because they're not getting the best product always. The taxpayers losing because there's less competition to be able to get the best value, from the bids. And honestly, the world does too, because as the leader of the free world, the the federal government does a lot of stuff, and when we're not putting our best foot forward and we're not putting the best product forward, then we're really hurting not only ourselves but our country, but also the world at large. And I don't think I'm leaning too far in the foxhole by saying that either. And it's not. I tell people that the government, at its best, it enables the American people to do what it does best, which is innovate and which is to achieve. And so the government, everybody thinks that the government does this stuff, but the government, they have, I think, for 2025 is a $7.3 trillion budget to get shit done. And I'm talking, like that they're spending money, and a lot of that is going to contractors to actually support their missions. And I always tell people, wasn't NASA put a man on the moon? NASA didn't build a single rocket. They had Grumman there doing it. It's the same way with like World War II. I love using this example. By the end of World War II, we had a 2-to-1 advantage over the rest of the entire world with respect to U.S. Navy warships. 2-to-1 advantage. Now think about that. U.S. doubled the entire remaining world's, naval fleet size. Now, again, the Department of Navy didn't build a single one of those ships. Not a single one. It was the American industrial base that did that. It was contractors. And somehow or another, Rosie the Riveter, who used to be a hero, has waned in popularity. Now fewer and fewer companies want to go out and help our country. They, in the 60s, early 60s, hey, Kennedy, he asked, ask not what, your country can do for you, but what you could do for your country. And we've gotten away from that. Now, all of a sudden, supporting your country is like a negative. And I'll throw this out there. You can't go to the theaters right now and not see at least one movie that's being shown where it's a government contractor has created, this apocalyptic weapon, who has actually created the apocalypse, who has, turned on their country to do X, Y, and Z, or God forbid, even weaponized dinosaurs. Poor innocent dinosaurs. They're being weaponized here. You know what I mean? It's like, I felt pretty high clearance in the past, and I can neither confirm nor deny the use of velociraptors in our defense arsenal. But the point I'm trying to make is that somehow or another, like the whole world has turned against federal government contractors, when in fact they are actually doing a great and wonderful thing. Plus, the entrepreneurial opportunities in the federal government marketplace is like the best in the world. It really is. It's the best marketplace. It's the best kept secret. Jonathan, I like that because I used to be in that industry and I made a few bucks in it. So I kind of liked it being a secret. You know what I mean? I didn't want too many people getting into it. But I've done business on both, the public sector side, in the federal government contracting world, and also in the commercial sector. And I tell you, the numbers are so much better and on the federal government contracting side of the house, and your probability of success is so much greater. They make it easy for small businesses. It truly is one of the best industries in the world for first-time entrepreneurs, or second-time, or third-time, or whatever. But it's just, but especially for first-time entrepreneurs who are trying to crack that code, they make it simple. So,
oh my gosh, would you agree that simple part kind of feels counterintuitive?
Yeah, it is, because well, here's the deal. When I say simple, it's different, and that's what makes it better. I tell people, if you go to Harvard Business School, because in Government Contracting Academy, I honestly, we got people across the entire spectrum of education levels. So we have Harvard MBAs, we got MIT graduates, we got Oxford graduates, we Columbia, Stanford. We have some of the most exquisitely educated business executives in the world attending Government Contracting Academy. Plus, we have people who graduated high school, and you know what? They're on a level playing field. They, having that Harvard MBA does not give you not one bit of an advantage over just graduating high school in the federal government contracting industry. Why? Because there's about this much uniqueness to federal government contracting that is not taught anywhere. Not in a single MBA program in the world. Not a single one. Why? Because I've looked for it. I've looked over and over and over for myself. And then now I do it, because of Government Contracting Academy. I'm trying to partner with companies that are, or colleges and universities to help get the word out about federal government contracting. There really isn't. Now, if you wanted to get in finance, man, go to Wharton. If you want to get in the automotive industry, go to Chicago Booth. If you want to get in consulting, go to Harvard. If you want to get into technology, go to MIT. You want to go to hospitality, you go here, or sports medicine here, or whatever it is. There's an MBA program that kind of specializes in it, with the exception of federal government contracting. And it really is about that much unique information. And you know what's great about that much unique information? It prevents 95% of U.S. companies from pursuing federal government contracts. Just that little bit right here. Either they don't know how to learn it or they're not willing to learn it. But that little bit of knowledge right there keeps 95% of U.S. companies away from bidding on government contracts. It's amazing. So if you're willing to learn this much, you will have leveled the playing field between you and somebody who went to Harvard or Wharton or wherever and got a business degree, because none of that stuff really matters. This is different, but only about this much. So you not only level the playing field, you're also eliminating about 95% of your natural competition. It truly is the best deal going.
Oh my gosh. Awesome. Nice work on that.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow, I was active listening. I had another thought, but I might have lost it.
Yeah. Well, that's good, because what I was hoping to do is, because I can't remember too much without looking at pictures. So I was hoping to kind of walk people through, like, what is federal government contracting, and what are the advantages of this industry over the other ones. So if you don't mind me, I'll share my
oh,
screen.
Yes, sir. Awesome.
Yeah, let's do that. Let me see if I'm smart enough to do that. Entire screen, boom, let's go.
Oh, I got to add you on my side.
So, yep, there we go. We've got the infinity look right there going. Okay, so let's just start right here. Well, first of all, I haven't even introduced myself. A little bit about me and why I advocate for it so much. I always tell people this is, my credibility slide, because that's what they expect, from somebody who's talking. But my real credibility slide is on the next, is the next one. But I've won about $2 billion in federal government contracts, about $400 million in small business set-asides. those logos to my right are my babies. They're either companies that I founded, co-founded, owned, co-owned, or what have you in the federal government contracting industry. Now, these are some headlines that are still up available on the internet. I don't know why, but they were. So the Washington Technology is kind of like the Wall Street Journal for this particular industry, and I clipped these because I wanted people to realize that just because you're a small business and you're maybe competing in the small business set aside world in the federal government, which I'll talk about here in a minute, doesn't necessarily mean that the opportunities are small. Some of these are like massive. The largest one that I've actually personally won was 115 million. The largest small business set aside that I have a connection to was my chief operations officer. He when he was a president of a small business 8A company, and he had won a $200 million small business set aside. So some of these small business set asides are anything but small. So this is kind of the credibility slide that everybody expects me to provide, but this is the real credibility slide that I have. I spent about 8 years walking around in the desert. It was actually really the entrepreneurial minefield, and I was stepping on these entrepreneurial landmines over and over and over. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, so stepping on a landmine once wasn't enough for me to learn. I usually had to do it 2 or 3 times, but I learned it. And once you learn it, it becomes so simple. But there's a process, that you got to go through, and it can take up to 8 years. And so I figured, like, hey, if I wasted 8 years of my business life learning this, that'd be foolish not to share it with people. I think that would be pretty selfish of me. So that's what I've done. I've tried to share those hard-learned lessons. So let's talk a little bit about federal government contracting, why I like it so much. Here's the reality. If the federal government was a stock, everybody would be buying it. Look at the spending. Look at these lines right here, this red and blue line. Boom.
It's not going down.
It is not going down. Yeah, and it's just growing rather rapidly. But people always say, like, well, there's a lot of variables that go into that. The size of the country is, we got more people in the country now. That's why it's so much more. Man. So this insert is federal spending per capita per individual. Hell, it's growing up. It's just growing, like wildly. Now, I want to show you something. You see a little bump here on this insert, this blue insert chart. It's called a stimulus. Well, that was when the housing market collapsed, and the economy is going to hell in a handbasket. It really is. But the federal government contracting industry is a compensating economy. When the economy is doing really well, there's more tax revenue to collect, there's more money to spend, and the federal government spends it. That's great and wonderful for federal government contractors. But
Randy, we just lost your camera. Your camera just cut out.
Oh, okay, that's fine. As long as can you see my
Yes, sir. We're so good. We got your slides.
Oh, okay, that's fine. So but what happens when the economy is not doing well? Well, when the economy is not doing well, the government will frequently inject a stimulus package into the economy. Now, the easiest way for them to do that is to increase government spending for things like infrastructure. And guess who gets this money? Contractors. It's not the mom and pop bakery, and down street, Main Street America. No, it's government contractors. They're the one who receives the stimulus spending, and it gets to the American people through federal government contractors, maybe through new highway systems, new infrastructure, new bridges, new whatever. And that's how it does it. So when the economy is doing well, there's more money to spend, and they spend it. When it's not doing well, they inject a stimulus package. Well, what happens when they run out of money? Well, they just raise the debt ceiling, and they borrow more money to spend it, on government contractors. It's the best thing in the world. Now I admit this is an older chart. It ends in 2018. And everybody always says, like, well, Randy, those dotted red lines, that's just garbage. That's not really what happened. There's no way that the spending has gone on and increased even more than that. Well, believe it or not, these forecasts were even naive and overly conservative. This is what it really is.
Oh my gosh.
$7.3 trillion is what the federal government is in 2025. So that's the reality. So if you think that this trend can't continue, it's getting steeper. It is. It really is. It's getting better and better. Now, as a taxpayer, oh my God, I'm like sweating bullets because I'm thinking like, hey man, we don't even have this money. We're spending it, you know. But as a federal government contractor, hey, if they're going to give it to somebody, give it to me. So if it's a stock, everybody would be buying this. If you're not buying this stock, you're not much of an investor. So now the other reason is the low cost, or barrier to competition. It's the low cost to actually compete for federal government contracts is ridiculously low. Now I'm going to tell you what mine was, and I don't recommend you go this route. And I'll show you why here in a minute. But it cost me $500 to launch my federal government contracting company and to start bidding on contracts. It was $100 business registration, as an LLC in Virginia. I bought a $50 website template that I populated myself. I bought a $300 printer, because, this is back, I'm dating myself. Most contracts right now are submitted electronically, but this is back in the day when they wanted one original and 7 copies and binders, that kind of deal. So, and then for the very first contract that I won, I spent about $50 in binders and paper, because they wanted, they wanted volume 1, volume 2, and volume 3 in different binders. So I really spent about $40 on binders, and they wanted, an original and 7 copies of each one. So that was 24 binders that I bought, plus paper for my printer. So, and I'll tell you how much that my very first prime contract was valued at here in a minute. The other thing that I like about the federal government contracting industry is you don't have to guess. Most entrepreneurs fail and they go bankrupt. They go out of business because they guessed what the market wanted. They guessed what they were willing to pay for it, and they guessed wrong. Well, guess what? There's no guessing in federal government contracting. What they'll do is they'll pass a bill, a spending bill, which is a law. And, they, in that bill, they'll say X number of dollars are going to be spent by this agency for the following items, X, Y, and Z. And then the agency, what they do is they write a request for proposal where they gets down to the gnat's rear end in detail regarding exactly what they want. Exactly what they want. It's like playing pin the tail on the donkey, where the donkey is the federal government, and they put a bullseye right exactly where they want that tail. And then what you got to do is you got to write a proposal, which becomes your tail, and you got to put it as close as you can to the bullseye. So it literally is like playing pin the tail on the donkey. Now, here's the good news about it. At any given time, there's about 30,000 solicitations in various stages, where you get to pick the donkey that's closest to you. And then you create your tail to put it on the donkey that best aligns with you and your company and your business goals. But wait, there's more.
Awesome.
There's the small business set-aside program. We didn't even talk about that. If you were the fast food industry, you'd be competing against this guy, and nobody wants to compete against this guy. He looks all happy and stuff like that until you try to compete against him. But what if Ronald McDonald and the fast food industry had to follow the same rules as the federal government, and they had their own small business set-aside program? What would that mean? That means that Ronald McDonald would be standing out in front of the Golden Arches, diverting 23% of his customers to New Guy's Burgers down the street. 23% would be going as set-asides to that small business, burger joint down the street. Gets even better than that. On large surges of work that McDonald's would be getting, let's say a bus shows up. Well, that's the equivalent of a large prime contract that they would be receiving, and they are required to subcontract out 29.43% of all of that surge business or a large prime contract, to small businesses. 29.43%. Everybody thinks that all federal government spending goes to Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and a bunch of it does. But nobody realizes that about 40% of every federal government dollar that's put up for solicitation is going to a small business. Now, why is that? Well, everybody's heard of Boeing. Everybody's heard of Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin and IBM. They've got great commercials. They really do. Nobody's ever heard of Analytic Strategies or Planet Risk or Secure Enterprise Analytics. Nobody's ever heard of those companies. Or how about A3IS? Nope, nobody's ever heard of them. But yet each one of those, companies either make tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts. Why do I know that? Because they were my companies. But nobody's ever heard of those. But everybody, it's the best kept secret. You've got like all of these small business owners becoming wealthy and nobody knows. Why? Because they own companies that nobody's ever heard of, supporting government agencies that are so nested down into the federal government that nobody's ever heard of. And where they're acquired, it doesn't make the headline news. Why? Well, it's only a $30 million acquisition. That doesn't make the Wall Street. Well, I tell you what, $30 million does for a small business owner, makes them pretty damn happy. It really does. Now all of a sudden they don't have to worry about money for a long time.
Generational wealth.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I would consider that generational wealth. Yeah. So, those are the advantages of it. So here, let me stop sharing. I don't know whether or not that has worked. Oh, you're right. It stopped working, didn't it? So let me see if I can get that going. Yeah. So anyway, so you got a pulsating circle there for. Yeah. But I'll see if I can get that working. But still. But that's why I love the market so much. Oop, there we go.
Yep. I like this side panel. It looks good.
It does it. I like that. Yeah, to get that angle going.
Yes, sir.
So, but yeah, that's why I like it. The federal government contracting industry so much. There, Jonathan. It's like I said, it's the best kept secret going.
It's that counterintuitive part. We've had this. You and I have been talking about this personally for 3 years, and we started doing this webinar series or this kind of content a few months ago. Long story short, we've talked about it a whole bunch of times, and for me, it still doesn't feel comfortable. It still we just lost your camera. Yeah, it still feels counterintuitive. How easy it actually is, because visually, perception wise, it just seems so complicated, but it's not. But it is. Really is. It's like paradoxical.
This is what's really crazy. When you're starting out as a small business, everybody thinks, "Oh, federal government contracting is so different. It's so it's not. It's no different than selling window replacements to owners of older homes. No different. Why? Because you're looking for bid teaming agreements. You're looking for subcontracts. You know who you're reaching out to? You're not reaching out to owners of older homes. You're reaching out to business development executives of large federal government contracting companies. So the business model is the exact same. It doesn't really change until you start writing proposals, as a prime contractor. And that's where it gets a little different. When you're writing your own prime contract, bids, then it's a little different. But until you get to that point in the subcontracting world, the bid teaming agreement world, you're reaching business development executives, no differently than a window replacement company would be reaching owners of older homes. You're just reaching out to them. And now through technology, it's so easy to do that. You can do email campaigns. You can do LinkedIn automation messaging, campaigns. There's a ton of different things that you can do to reach out to these business development executives, to let them know that, like, hey, I'm a small business and I'm a service disabled veteran owned small business. There's a specific earmark just for my type of business. And we also, specialize in X, Y, and Z, and we have corporate credentials in A, B, and C. You know what I mean? So it's not as different as what people think it is. It just looks different.
Oh my gosh, that might be a point worth elaborating on a little bit more. And I apologize if this is advanced step 2 or whatnot. But why? Why would a prime contractor want a subcontractor? Because our overall theme for this is to encourage people to get into the game.
Here's the deal. They don't want us. That's the reality. But the federal government, the federal government, they realize that small businesses is the backbone of the American economy, and creates competition and so on and so forth. And I'm going to give you a perfect example here. One of the last things that my first company did, and we did this I think in 2015, is we were responsible for developing the Navy's manpower readiness enterprise. Well, it already existed, but it only existed on the active duty side. It didn't exist on the reserve duty side, the reserve officer and enlisted side. And then they wanted us to do changes. So basically, we were redoing the whole thing. Now, that tasking was something that there was probably about 3 companies in the world that they would have let do during the 90s, because it was so complex. Now, through the small business set aside program that the Navy, that the federal government has, we were gaining experience doing less complicated things all along. Why? Because we could bid on those and we could actually win it, the simpler ones, and learn from it and develop it, and develop our skill set. And then there were things like the mentor protege program, where we were being mentored by Hewlett Packard. Now, I want you to think about that. Hewlett Packard was being paid by the federal government to mentor us, And, people say like, well, why? Why would you ever do that? Taxpayers' dollars are being wasted. So that, and honestly, we received, the government paid about $1 million over a period of 3 to 5 years for Hewlett Packard to mentor us, as a company, their company mentoring our company. And you can say, wow, that was a wasted $1 million. That was free money to a small business. Well, now all of a sudden we were able to bid on something and complete a task, a contract that, like I said, 15, 20 years earlier, only 3 companies that the government would have trusted to do. And now all of a sudden, instead of paying that premium price to have IBM do it, and I'm not knocking IBM. I love IBM. I think they're one of the most capable, robust, mature companies that you can have. Certainly the most trusted, but they have costs that we don't. And we were able to do that same caliber of effort for about this much money. And let me just say this, the delta between what they would have paid IBM to do what we were doing and what they were paying us was a hell of a lot, more than $1 million. So the money that the government made on that investment, whoa, that was a pretty decent investment that the government made, and that was just on one contract that we were doing. So that's the investment that the federal government, and everybody rails on the federal government for doing everything wrong. They do some things wrong. I'm a taxpayer. I get the bitch, but but at the same time, they do a lot of things right. And what they're doing with the small business set aside program is something that's really, really right, because now we're able to drive the price, the cost of having that high end service that was only being performed by this, Uber company that has like Uber expenses. They were able to do it for pennies on the dollar. And it's the best investment going. So,
oh my gosh,
there's a lot of support that the federal government gives small businesses because they want small businesses to be successful. They need it. Most of the innovations that are coming out right now, my first chief operations officer, who was also my plebeian roommate and best man at my wedding, a really good guy. His Wharton. He had a Wharton classmate that launched this incredibly innovative technology company, and they were a small business, and they were like really thinking out of the box how to do how to use betting and gaming and basically how to be a bookie, and they were creating a bookie exchange there basically to improve intelligence gathering. And no big company would have done that, but a small company was thinking out of the box. They took the risks and they did it, and worked out for everybody. They created a company. They proved its value to both the government and industry. And next thing you know, they're being gobbled up because the bigger company could take it and put it in more places than what the small company could. But the guy cashed out with a lot of money. And, the government, they obtained a lot of innovation because of small business innovation. Big companies, they don't want to change anything. Why? Because it's the status quo. You know what I mean? Like, hey,
Food
I've
chain.
got it good. Yeah. Small businesses, we're on the outside looking in. We're willing to take a risk or a chance to try something to get inside. And that's what he did. And like I said, that's kind of like the reason why small business innovation is so important to the federal government.
Oh my gosh, that personal story of yours ties back to the overall theme of this, right? Like I'm not sure if it's appropriate to say it like this, but empathetically walking in the government shoes, what's going on in their mind. And your story where the government's going out of its way to build up small business because in the long run it saves money. Like it's in the government's best interest to build up. It's not trying to squish the small guy. It's lifting the small guy up. They want you to win, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I tell you what, in 2025, I really wasn't going to talk about this too much, but I will, because it's just tied into what you just said. 2025, there's going to be disruption. We have a new administration coming in. They feel like they have a mandate to improve government efficiency, and they have control of both houses of Congress. Things are going to change. I guarantee it. There's going to be disruption, and there's going to be some chaos, and some things are going to break. But this is the good news for small businesses with that. There are going to be all kinds of shifting budget priorities, and some budgets are going to go down. They're going to go from boom to boom. Now, the deal is if you were paying, and we'll pick on IBM because again, I really like IBM, and hopefully they won't sue me.
So do
if
I.
they hear
Okay,
Don't sue me, IBM, because
awesome.
I'm complimenting you too. But let's say it costs IBM $10 million just to support this government agency's mission, $10 million a year. And that agency took a 20% budget hit. Why? Because of shifting budget priorities. So now that government agency, they have a choice. They can do one or two things. They can either say, okay, IBM, here's $8 million, and we only want you to do 80% of the mission. Well, nobody's going to do that, because what about the other 20% of the mission? The government, they're supporting the American people. They're doing things. They're not going to walk away from their mission. However, there is a way that they can have 100% of that mission done, and they have to accept the risk and the inconvenience of going with a small business. So now that $8 million, a small business, because they're cheaper, because they have lower operating costs, can do the full mission for 80% of what IBM could do it for. And that's not a criticism of IBM. That's just the reality that, you got a small business owner, yours truly included. Hell, I was working out of my basement, then my kitchen, and then my Starbucks. Starbucks was charging me a cup of coffee for the evenings I was spending there, which is a hell of a lot cheaper than having IBM, facilities and an IBM, corporate jet, and their laboratories and their R&D, and that's all kind of gets built into their rates, for things that can be done by a small business, which is unnecessary. Use the hell out of IBM, but use IBM for the things that only IBM can do. Don't use IBM for things that a small business can do. And I think that's where a lot of opportunities are going to be coming in 2025. Things are going to be shifting, and whenever there's a little bit of chaos, and you've got shifting budget priorities, that is probably the best incentive for the federal government to really use small businesses. It's like, man, I'd prefer not to use it. Who would ever want to go with Analytic Strategies when you could go with IBM? Like, you're a fool. IBM, they're like zero risk and all this kind of stuff. My first company, Analytic Strategies, well, I won't tell this to too many people, but I was about 20 minutes away from not being able to make payroll, on my very first prime contract. You know what I mean? So there are risks associated with with a small business, but the government is willing to accept those in order to when they have a budget hit. So that's why the opportunities are going to be growing for small businesses in 2025.
Oh my gosh, I don't know if we've ever really hit this one directly, but I would like to. Step one, like you want to become a government contractor. Step one, like, okay, I decide that yes, everything you're saying is absolutely awesome. That is the environment. Prosperity is nearly guaranteed. What do I do next? What do I do first?
What was step one? Keep your day job. The federal government, I'm being serious. Keep your day job. And the reason why I say that is because the federal government doesn't do anything quickly. You need to be doing everything perfectly. Everything's, you are doing it perfectly. you're fast tracking your success in the federal government contracting industry. However, it takes the government, months to review proposals sometimes and make an award. And that's once you've already got the bid team. And that's once you've already got, discriminators that would make a bidder want you over somebody else. So step number one, keep your day job. Commit to saying that this is a different type of opportunity. This isn't making a few bucks, every week side gig. This is a different type of effort. This is create generational wealth side gig. You know what I mean? It's a different game. It's like if you want to make 20, 50, $100 extra, $200 extra a month, there's 1,000 different ways to do that.
It's not mowing yards.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, but if you want to really change your family situation, your personal situation financially, federal government contracting is the best way to do that. However, it takes a little while. I tell people that, every small business has this type of growth curve. It's flat, start getting traction. Now it's exponential. Very few companies, small businesses grow linearly. Very few. Honestly, I don't know of any. If you're growing linearly, that means you're growing really slowly, and that means you're ultimately going to hit a bump and you're going to go out of business. However, this flat curve right here that took me 8 years to traverse, one of the things that we do in Government Contracting Academy is you try to compress that 8-year learning curve that took me in about 8 weeks. Why wait all this time until you start hitting that fun, exciting part of the curve, that exponential? So one is you got to learn the industry. I would say one of the easiest, best ways to do that is there's a book right behind me. It's called Good Enough to Launch Your Company. And I sell it for 99 cents, on Kindle. Why? Because they require me to charge 99 cents. Hell, I'd give it away. In fact, if there's a way that we can give people a download link to the PDF version, we should do that, Jonathan. But the deal is, it'll walk you through the process of how to define what kind of government contracting company you want to be. And it kind of walks you through those initial stages. And then the second thing, and you're going to laugh when I say this, you got to have a personal brand. Why? Because your startup, by definition, is just starting up, and its corporate resume is blank. It has not a damn thing on it. So the question is, are they hiring your company because of your corporate resume, or are they going to hire your company because they trust you and they know you and you're a branded entity? So I got this all wrong when I started out, in federal government contracting. I wish I'd have done things so much differently, looking back on it. But you live and you learn, and I did well enough, and it finally worked out for me. But had I done it all over again, I would have focused on my own personal branding. Why? Because 85% of the time, the founder of the company is going to sell his company, not the other way around. Once your company becomes IBM and everybody's heard of it, well, you being the CEO of IBM adds credibility to you. But until then, people aren't going to know your company, but they can know you. They can know you as a thought leader, as a mentor, as a seasoned leader, as an influencer. That's what you got to do. You got to have your own personal brand, I'll share this story. I poke fun at myself, quite a bit with this story, but in 2020, I had just sold my last company, and I just cleared all my non-competes. That means I was available to do whatever the hell I wanted to do. That was my third company that I had sold in the federal government contracting industry. I sold each one of them for, single digits or double digit millions, each. So I'd made, I had some success in the federal government contracting industry. And I thought in 2020, I would just kick back and just see what kind of interesting offers I would have. What kind of opportunities would be coming my way? Because, hey, 2016 to 2020, I'd sold 3 companies in this industry. I'd won hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of work, So what came my way? Absolutely nothing. And
Tumbleweeds.
yeah. And I thought, like, wow, man, that's kind of interesting. And then I started, scratching my head, and I Googled myself, I didn't even Google myself. Everybody Googles themselves now on a daily basis. Like, hey, what's about me? What's going on with me today? But when I Googled myself, I had a third cousin who died in the 1980s. I'd only met him once or twice, but he died in the 1980s, and his obituary ranked higher than I did. An obituary from the 1980s ranked higher than I did. And I just sold 3 companies and I'd done all this stuff and won massive contracts and CEO of this company, all this kind of stuff. And and to say that, to say that I was beat by somebody who was inactive would be an understatement, because the guy was dead, for the for the previous 40 years. And I had no personal brand. None. I had a big fat resume, but resumes don't matter because nobody knows about your resumes. And even if you give your resume to somebody, the funny thing about it is even if you give it to it, 85% of the people who read your resume are unqualified to actually interpret what it means. Think about that. So your resume means very, very, very little. It's all about your reputation. People aren't going to Google you and see your resume. They're going to Google you and they're going to see your reputation. They're going to see, what kind of thought leadership you're displaying, what kind of mentoring you're doing, what kind of, influence that you have. Those are the things that potential partners of your small business, they really, really need to know. They want to know. And they say, hey, this Randal Wimmer guy, hey, we got to have this. We need this guy's brain helping us write the proposal. He's a thought leader in cybersecurity, or a thought leader in this, or thought leader in that. And wow, look how many people know him. Look how many followers he has. I bet you there's people in the agency who know this guy. Holy cow, did you read his he's connected to and this is, I don't know if this is still the case, but I was actually connected to the Secretary of Defense there for a while. I don't know if he's still the, SecDef or not, and I don't remember who he is, but I knew the guy when he was in industry, apparently, but anyway, so, they're going to look at, your connections, and the saying is your network is your net worth. And it's so true in this industry. It really is. So that's one of the things that I would strongly recommend. I would strongly recommend, if you want to get serious about it, one, you got to learn a little bit about it. The easiest way to do that is, good enough to launch your company. Again, we'll get it to you for free. I'm not, my wife had a book traditionally published, and I know that you don't make money off of the book, so I didn't write it to make money. I wrote it to help people. So
I will. I'll send it out to everybody that's registered. If I can see your name, I'll send it out to you.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. So, but yeah, that's what I would do. I would start there, and then it gives you the 101 on federal government contracting, and then the other thing is start working on your personal brand. And once you made the decision to really truly do that, launch an LLC, and you get it credentialed. And what do I mean by credentialed? I don't know. Let me see if I can still see this. I want to show you a picture about how much you can game the system. And that's what I'm talking about. Let me see. Let's go share screen. Share screen.
And how gaming sounds is bad, but that's not the case at all. It's like being really good at chess. Right?
Exactly. And what it really is doing is you're really giving the government and your partners what they need to see. You know what I mean? It's not gaming at all. You're really giving people what they really truly need. So ISO certification is like college degrees for your company. It's just like a high schooler. Let's say a high schooler graduates and he wants to become a swanky consultant for McKinsey or Boston Consulting or Deloitte. And so he blasts out his resume and to all these different companies. And we know what's going to happen, which is nothing. They're not even going to respond to him. Why? Because he's risky. There's nothing on that resume that says that he would be a low risk hire, that he knows what he's talking about, and that that he can deliver what you need to have delivered. Nothing on that resume. All he's going to say is that he was in the Spanish club and that he ran track 3 years. That's the only, and he has a high school diploma. So he figures this out because he's a smart person. So he goes to MIT and he gets a computer science degree. And then he goes to Harvard Business School and he gets an MBA. And then he sits for a CPA. And now he's got 3 credentials. And now McKinsey, Boston Consulting, Deloitte, KPMG, Pricewaterhouse, all these swanky consulting firms are standing in line to hire this guy. Why? He still has no work experience, but his corporate credentials have taken the place of that, and they have, made him a very low risk hire. And it's the same thing with your business, and people forget that. This is probably the best tip that I can tell people.
Oh my gosh, totally.
When your company is starting out, it has a blank resume. People aren't subcontracting with you. The government isn't contracting with you. They're contracting with your asset, an asset that you own, but it's still a separate entity other than you. And you've got to build up that entity, and you want to do that. And the reason why is because that's how you create equity in it. So you can sell it one day. So what you do is, when your company lacks work experience, you've got to augment it. You got to put something on its resume. And in many cases, corporate credentials are even better than work experience. So what do I mean by that? I'm talking about ISA certification. Again, they're like college degrees for your company, and you can get them in different things. ISO 9001 is like the foundational one. That's for quality management. That's the one that's going to help you the most. But information security management, information security, cyber threats, that's the largest risk, in my opinion, in many agencies. The largest budget item right now for services is IT services. Hell, what if you had a certification that says that you do it, and that you've been audited by an accredited third party and found fully compliant with the globally accepted industry best practices for IT services? Wow. Talking about a proof point. You got it going on. You know how to do IT services if that's the case. And so how much do they help you out? Well, right now, there's somewhere between 70,000 and 140,000 small businesses in the federal government contracting industry. 70,000 are in the dynamic small business database. There's 140 plus thousand that are registered business entities that are registered in the system for award management, sam.gov. So somewhere between 70,000 and 140,000 is an accurate number of small businesses. But let's go with the really, really, really feel good, only 70,000. You're looking at this from a competition standpoint, only 70,000. Well, you don't want to bid against 70,000 people. You don't have to compete against them. So what you try to do is you try to get a set-aside status, such as historically underutilized business zone, or 8A, which is predominantly minority owned, women-owned small business, or a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. Now, everybody starts, they look at these and they're like, man, I'm not a service-disabled veteran, I'm not a woman, and I'm not a minority. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Well, hub zone, historically underutilized business zone, has nothing to do with the owner and has everything to do with about your employees and the location of your office. And so any and every small business can become a hub zone. And to be honest with you, that's the best one when you're starting out. Why? Because they're the hardest to find. So now all of a sudden you're not competing against 70 to 140,000 small businesses for subcontracts and prime contracts. You're only competing against 5,000 hub zones because they get their own specific earmark. Now, if you got one ISO certification, you'd be one of 51. What if you got two or more? You'd be one of 16 hub zones competing for over $30 billion in earmarks. Now, I want you to think about what I just said. You're one of the 16 most credentialed hub zones competing for $30 billion in earmarks. And you know what?
30 billion, that's a lot, isn't it?
That's a crazy amount. Now, I want you to think about this. Now, this is a little dated. This is a couple years old, but this right here is the subcontracting goal achievement. Again, for hub zones, it's 3%. So, for example, when Boeing wins a $1 billion contract, they've got to give at least 3% of that to a hub zone. So 3% of a $1 billion contract is $30 million. Now, I want you to look at these numbers: 1.1, 2.5, 1.7, 2.3, some 0.6, 0.8. Like, they don't even come close to meeting their hub zone set-asides. Why? Because they can't find enough qualified hub zones to give the full earmark to. Now, what does qualified mean? Qualified, in layman's terms, means low risk. If you are low risk, they can turn a blind eye by how much work experience you have, as long as you're low risk. And what does ISO certification mean? Well, ISO certification means that you have documented roles and responsibilities. You've got documented processes and procedures. You have management review board meetings where you assess, where you collect and assess and make decisions based upon key performance key performance indicators, metrics. You're making data-driven decisions. So it means that you have corporate maturity. ISO certification equals corporate maturity equals low risk, which equals qualified. And so once you learn a little bit about of the insider tips, and again, I didn't learn any of these things. I was a small business, and I was competing against this group right here, the 70,000 plus. I didn't have any individual set asides. I didn't have any corporate credentials going, and I was just banging my wall trying to sell a company because I had no personal brand. I was trying to sell a company that had a blank resume, saying that I could add value to somebody, to a bid team or to a contract team. And it wasn't happening. That's why it took me 8 years to have any bit of success. 8 years to kind of figure this stuff out. Now, once I figured it out, oh my gosh, every single thing I touched turned to gold. So I got my first corporate credential in 2013. I followed up with a second one called CMMI. And so that was in 2013 and 2014. And in 2016, I sold that company after winning nearly $400 million in prime contracts. I wish I could say it was because I was so damn smart, but it wasn't. It was because I learned how to play the game. And I just told you, I just saved you 8 years of your life. Get a set-aside status that there aren't that many, so you don't have to compete against the 70,000 to 140,000, and then get corporate credentials. Once you get corporate credentials, you got to let God and country know. The best way to do that, believe it or not, is through your own personal brand. So you got to really start putting yourself out there so people get to know you. People become comfortable with you. People will actively seek you out because you're going to be able to sell your company a hell of a lot better than your company's going to be able to sell you. So that's
my gosh. A thought just popped into my mind. You were saying how to play the game. And actually, metaphorically, that works out pretty well. Because think of sports, football, basketball, whatever it may be. Your natural advantages only count for so much. At some point, the short guy can be awesome at basketball if he learns how to play the game.
Oh, absolutely.
The game trumps all other variables.
Yeah. It helps to be 6'8", but there's a lot of people in the NBA who's 6'2", who know how to play the game and they do it really well. And why does everybody have to make the NBA? What about getting a college scholarship? And going to college that normally costs $80,000 a year and you're going for free. That's $240,000. That's not a bad, that's not a bad return on that investment of learning how to play basketball also. So you don't have to become $1 billion a year company to cash out.
Starting a business at your kitchen table.
Yeah. That's the game plan right there. Starting at the kitchen table. And I tell people, I show people how little it cost me to actually launch a company. And, it's like $500. But I don't want people to think like, oh, wow, $500 and I can become a decamillionaire. Well, yeah, that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is to say, because it costs so little to compete in this industry, you don't need a brick and mortar building. You don't need to hire a ton of employees. You don't even have to hire any employees, until you actually win a contract. That should encourage you to invest a little bit of money. I tell people the cost of a used Hyundai, $24,000. I can get you 2 ISO certifications through Government Contracting Academy. And we're able to do it for that price because we focus exclusively on small businesses in the government contracting industry. And we've got it down to a science, how we can do that. And then plus I have a really good volume discount with auditors. And so we keep that cost down low, and that's total cost. And again, we're able to do that. So the cost of a used Hyundai, what does that mean? You got to drive your older car around for a few more years, but what can that investment do for you and your family? It can create generational wealth. It can put you in one of the top 16, hub zones in the country, competing for $30+ billion in earmarks. That's what an investment, equivalent to a used Hyundai can do for you.
I wonder if there's an opportunity to compare it to like a Harvard degree or an MIT degree or whatnot. Into the corporate personal comparison.
Yeah.
Getting a Harvard degree puts you above everybody else, right? And it takes 4 years and how many hundreds of thousands of
Oh,
dollars.
yeah.
And then
Yeah. It's like, well, that's the other thing I like about federal government contracting is like it's having that $250,000 business degree doesn't help you as much in this industry as what it would if you'd be in any other industry. So that means you're not competing against somebody that has this tremendous advantage over you. Everybody starts out on a level playing field. It really is the case in federal government contracting.
$500 and a kitchen table.
Yeah, $500. So, well, hey, we're down to our last 5 minutes, and we usually go over. Is there anything you want to do in the last 5 minutes, or Jonathan? Other than, is there a question?
Oh my gosh,
or anything or?
Yeah, so I will send out your book after we're done here to everybody that's registered on LinkedIn. So for those watching, or we're streaming to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook right now. Make a point to reach out to me, and I will. I'll make sure to send you Randy's book. Why? Because it's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. In our last,
I don't know about awesome. When I hear it has helped a lot of people fall asleep at night.
Oh my gosh. Well, stories resonate with people. Let me tell you a story. So similar to Randy having it in the backdrop of his camera, I used to have his book on the file cabinet behind me, and then my wife took it. My wife took it without talking. Yeah, she grabbed it and she read it. She said it. Here's a secondary review, not influenced by me. My wife loved it. She said it was awesome. She actually uses I've told you this before, but my wife uses your quotes to come back at me because Randy said it, so it's got to be true.
Oh,
and it works. She wins. Yeah.
Yeah. That doesn't work in my household. We'll just say it that
Awesome.
way. But I appreciate the compliment there. But
Yes,
but yeah, I would say that's probably, and I'm not just saying that. I used to scour the bookstore. This is way back when I was trying to find, when I was trying to launch my company. There was who in the world is ever going to buy a book from some small business owner in the federal government contracting industry when they can read a book about Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Hermosi or how about these green-eyed snake eaters, these former SEALs and Delta Force members, and talking about leadership. It's a relatively boring book compared to those, but it's actionable, and I stand by that. And the others are way more entertaining, but this is actionable. You can create a checklist. It's the whole purpose of the book. I walk you through a process to create a checklist of the things you have to do in order to be successful. And if you do it, you're probably going to get your nose bloodied a few times with mistakes, but you're going to be really close to the path you need to be on to be successful.
Oh my gosh, I just thought of a tagline for that. You want to watch the movie, or do you want to be the movie?
Yeah. Well, I look back on it and I get a little nostalgic about my whole entrepreneurial life, and there were times when I'm sure that a movie producer could have made it seem a lot sexier than what it was.
Car chase.
There's nothing too sexy about it's 3 a.m. and you haven't slept for 3 days, and your proposal's due in 4 hours, and you're trying to catch a 30-minute cat nap on your couch in your office. Now, I'm sure you can glamorize that somehow, but it didn't seem too glamorous at the time. But it was well worth it. I'll say that it was well worth it. And they're the most meaningful days of my professional life, without a doubt. And I have 4 sons, and I'm so desperate for them to have that same experience, of building something from scratch, being able to walk into an office building and know that you just created everything there. It has your personality. It's got your mission. It's got your drive. And I just want them to have that same experience, but the good and the bad.
Oh my gosh, we are in our last little bit here. I'm going to tell a story which will cause us to go over. I'm going to do it anyway. So, holy cow, coincidentally, I was up until 12:30 last night working on Create Personal Equity, the company that we are launching, and I
Hmm.
believe you spoke to it a few times over. I was up until 12:30 last night, and you and I have been talking for 3 years, right? So I've heard you say that you slept on the couch in the office to get stuff done. I woke up this morning at 4 o'clock. So that's 4 hours of sleep. Or no, it's even less than 4 hours of sleep. Either way, I actually did what you talk about. I woke up feeling great, tired, sore, and all this other stuff. But like I felt like a man. Like it felt good. Like I
Oh,
was
buddy, I'm
like I
telling
was
you what.
doing what I could do.
When you're working for yourself, I call it I called it entrepreneurial adrenaline. You know, when when you when you leave your day job and you come home and you spend time with your family,
Yes, sir.
and then after the kids go to bed, and you get a chance to work 2 or 3 or 4 hours on your family, and your dreams, nothing makes you feel more fulfilled and satisfied
Oh my gosh.
than doing that. Because the question is do you want to work for somebody else's dreams or your dreams? And those 2 or 3 or 4 hours that I was working on my family's future, were I just felt so good about that. And once I actually got my very first subcontract, which was me working as my own employee, man, I walked in the house feeling like a hero because I was making money. I was, not a salary. My company was generating revenue. I just happened to be an employee of my company, and I felt like a rock star. I really did. Because the old saying is making your first dollar bill is half as hard as making your first million. You're halfway there to it, and I really thought that, and I believed that. So I knew that once I made my first dollar bill, then I was halfway to becoming a millionaire. And it was so true. It really was. And once you make your first million, you're halfway to becoming a decamillionaire. And again, that's so true. Because it's all about momentum and inertia. Once you get that body moving in the right direction, everything else kind of takes care of itself. And that's what everybody sees. Everybody sees the success. You're like, wow, did you see how quickly he grew? Well, that's because you didn't see the previous 8 years.
It's a
You know what I mean?
measurement
It's
bias.
like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of work that goes into that, overnight success. But but while you're doing that, though, you feel good about yourself. You really do, because you feel like you're actually doing something tangible to change the lives of your children, not just pay the bills. This is, you're changing lives. You're changing trajectories. You're giving options. You're giving possibilities, to your kids. And that's what really kept me going, because I'm telling you, it's tough. It's tough to keep going, man. It's a dog's life. I was working two jobs. I was working my day job, and then I was working my entrepreneurial startup job, for my dream. But and I love my in-laws to death, but they were both government employees, government, and high level GS-15s and SES. So, they were really successful in the government. They were encouraging me day after day after day to put away this silly dream and join the government workforce. And and I wanted more for my kids than what a salary, whether it be a government salary or a government contracting salary or commercial sector salary, could do. And the only way you can create wealth in this world is to own an asset that appreciates.
Yes, sir.
Because otherwise you're selling your time, and you don't have enough time in a day to sell enough of it to become wealthy. Even surgeons, there's only so many hours in a day, and no matter how much you charge a surgeon, they're going to max out around $500,000-$600,000 a year. You got to own an asset that appreciates. And the good thing about being an entrepreneur is you get to create that asset for nothing, for free. It's not like the stock market where you got to buy the asset, or it's not like real estate where you have to buy the property, and then watch it appreciate. In entrepreneurship, you create the asset with about this much, investment in it. So it's the only way, that the little guy can actually get ahead, in my opinion.
Oh my gosh. It's New Year's, and we should probably end this with something New Year's theme. And this just kind of came to my mind. But do you want 2025 to be a whimper or a bang? Right?
Yeah,
It
and
is
you
a
have a
choice. We
choice.
want that.
A year can change your life. A
Yes,
year can
sir.
change your life. It can change your life, physically and financially. For example, if you decide to get in shape, just think if you actually exercised and you ate a healthy diet for every single day for 365 days. Just think about how you would physically change and how much better and how much healthier you'd be. Same thing with launching a company. 365 days can make you a wealthy person or put you well on your way to becoming a wealthy person. 1 year. And that's why I like New Year's, I like birthdays, because that's that line in the sand. And you can say, okay, I'm going to cross that line with a vengeance. And these are the goals that I want to set for this next period of time. And I think now is like the perfect time to do it, New Year's. um,
Yes.
and here's the other thing too. I tell people, um, they're your dreams, and if you don't do it, you're not the only one who suffers from that. And I'm just being brutal now. You
Yeah.
know, if you keep on putting off your dreams of becoming a successful entrepreneur, it's your family that's going to suffer. It's going to be another. They're not going to have access to a beach house. They're not going to be able to go to the colleges they want to go to. You're not going to be able to support them or pay for that wedding. You're not going to be able to buy them a car. When they need a car. There are so many different things that you're not going to be able to
Somebody
do.
gets hurt.
That's right. There's
Unknown variables. Right.
I call that dreaming with consequences. Dream. Everybody always thinks about the positives. Oh, if I win the lottery blank, or if I win this, or if I achieve that, what happens if you don't? And you have control over it. Then you are choosing. Then you're choosing to have these consequences, and they're not always yours alone. Most of the time, they're your families. The people you care about the most. So, not to guilt people into doing it. I'm just being honest with you. Like if you want to help your family out the most, give your kids an example of what can be done. The person that they know and love and trust and admire the most, if they see you, too scared to throw your hat in the ring and try and dare greatly, then god damn, they're not going to do it. The most trusted, they're your kids. They look up to you as a superhero. And if you're too timid to do it, then they're learning a really bad lesson from you. But if they see you try it, I have four sons, and I think I've kind of screwed up a little bit because now my kids think entrepreneurship is too easy. And it's like, oh, Dad, I haven't made $1 million in the first 6 months. I'm probably in the wrong line of business. Let me pivot to something else. And I'm saying, like, time out. No,
Wait a second.
but they don't bat an eye about launching a business. You know, and I really like that. I really do, because hey, there's no strikes in entrepreneurship. It's not 3 strikes and you're out. You get to swing the bat as many times as you want to strike it big. And I have kids, and there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to keep on swinging the bat over and over and over and over and over, because they saw me swing the bat. And they saw me swing the bat and be successful, and they saw me swing the bat and miss. And both are very valuable
Life.
observation. Yeah, so they've seen me launch companies that didn't work, and they've seen me launch companies that did work. So, and both are very valuable learning opportunities for them. So, like I said, I'm maybe I'm a proud papa, but I think that my kids are going to, the ones who are very interested in becoming entrepreneurs, I think they're going to be successful. And I think with success in entrepreneurship comes wealth. So I have pretty high probability that that's going to happen.
We are 9 minutes over our time. I do this for my show, Easy to Read Deep Thoughts. I'm going to spring this on you for the first time. Closing thought. One thought you'd like our audience to take away from this.
Well, I tell you what, if you put off your dreams, then they're not dreams. They're
Ooh, nice.
if you keep on putting them off, then they're not real. I call them, they're daydreams. They're not goals. They're daydreams. So unless you put a line in the sand and you put a due date next to something, it's a daydream. So I had to stop daydreaming in order to have success, and that was the hardest thing in the world for me to do, is to say that daydream that I'm dreaming about, Let's quantify that. Put a due date next to it. Put an action item underneath it. Put a due date on that. Wow. Now all of a sudden that daydream has turned into a real dream, which has turned into a goal, which has turned into a plan. And now you have a plan, and you execute the plan. It's going to happen for you. Maybe not initially, or maybe not immediately, but at some point. But you gotta put a due date. You gotta put a due date next to an action item. And it's so easy to say I'm going to. Hell, I do it all the time. With trying to get in shape, and I'm like, I'll start it. I'm going to start it on January 1st. So for the last 2 weeks, I've been putting off actually doing any exercise until January 1st. But now I got a start line. So just like everybody else, I'm going to be suffering on a treadmill probably tomorrow. But you gotta start it though. You gotta put a due date next to something.
Oh my gosh, that was a good way to close it out. Holy cow. Well, I would like to thank everybody that showed up to watch this. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to say I consider this one of our best ones. This was good.
Oh, hey.
It resonated.
Camera issues and everything. I like that. You got low standards there, Jonathan. That's why I like you. Awesome. That's why I married my wife. She had low standards.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. Well, holy cow. I appreciate it. Thank you, Randy.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.